Hey, this is Vu, and today I'm going to be talking about playing A site on DE Overpass. And this is actually a very unique spot to play, and pretty much the main reason that I think Overpass is my favorite map. And the reason for this is actually I think that an aggressive opper should be able to find a pick nearly every round if you play it correctly. Now, this does hold true in pugs and in matchmaking and even in lower tiered leagues because it takes a ton of coordination to actually be able to prevent an opper from finding a pick, because there are so ridiculously many angles that an opper can take just to find a random pick and to be able to safely fall back. So I'll kind of go over those. Now, it does seem like I'm being a bit op-centric here, and I am, because I think this is a spot where the opper should choose where he should be playing and the rifler should just be supporting all the time. Now, this is assuming you're going to be playing two people A and your team is not doing a setup towards short where you need your rifler to go stairs or you need to be covering something. Generally, what you want to be doing on this CT side is playing like a two-man duo, kind of like you're playing a terrorist side, where what you're really trying to find is an entry pick, and then you can fall right into a passive setup and play very passively, just waiting for them to try and execute, and you can play it out fairly safely from in the bomb site or close in bathrooms. Now, for this opper pick, I'll name basically the general areas I'll go to in any given round and where the rifler would go as well. But the opper can basically decide where he feels comfortable and he can go there, and the rifler can just try and support as well as possible. That's generally how I think this site should be played. So generally, if you have an opper with a good spawn up here, anywhere kind of around this area, you can go for one of two picks. The first one, the much more common one, would be the party pick, and I'll show you that in a second. And the second one is the stairs pick, and I'll go for this maybe once or twice a half, depending on how I feel, and try and find that pick on their opper or a rifler posted up for someone to peek. It's actually a very easy way to find a kill once or twice, and it kind of puts them on the back foot. The pick I will go for much more often, though, is the party peak. So what I'll do is I'll just run up here, get a little bit of a b-hop up the stairs, and then peek right here. I can tell you that in at least 100 games of DE Overpass, I've only gotten killed with that peek after I've missed. The only times I've ever been killed here are if I've peeked out, missed, and then they've killed me. And more often than not, even if I do miss, I can still get away, and that's pretty much it. There are very few people that pre-aim this. Now, I have noticed recently that more and more people are doing that peek, and so you might find someone that pre-aims that, but it's still fairly unlikely for it to happen. Now, the one thing you need to worry about is getting blind and not being able to find your way back into bathrooms. But if you practice it a little bit, you should be able to find your way back, and what you really want to do is get around this corner as fast as possible, because if you come back like this, of course they can strafe wide and kill you from quite a ways away, or from up there as well. So you can try and make sure you get around that corner as fast as possible, and once you fall back from there, you can actually hold this angle. It's actually a very solid angle as well, because generally when terrorists come towards here, they don't run out like this. They generally strafe along the back wall more often than not, or if they're coming down into bathrooms, you can also find the pick, because you can hold this angle like so, and if someone jumps down from party to clear bathrooms, he's generally going to do it kind of like this, and then he's going to strafe out looking for a guy right here. He's not expecting you to be right here, and that should be another spot where you can find pretty much a free entry. So these are the two most common spots I'll generally play towards bathrooms. I'll also sometimes hold an angle like this if my rifler is supporting me towards here or something like that. And towards long, the most common way I'll play that is I'll jump up here, jump up straight onto here with a little bit of air strafing. It's actually not very hard, and play this angle. And generally when I play this angle, I'll play it with a rifler that plays, right about here, kind of looking down, and pretty much I'm relying on me not missing my op shot, which I'm fairly confident in, and if you have an opper that's confident in that, you can do this as well. And if I get blind, I drop down immediately, and this guy can turn around and support, and he can quickly get behind the rock, so he's a little bit harder of a target, and at the very worst, he can delay for me to re-peek and get that frag with the op. Now, if they're not going there, then I'll have the rifler walk push up, he'll start to peek around after a little while, see what's happening, and oftentimes you can clear out and get a ton of information and actually kind of flank party if you need to, just by playing that setup. Now, Other than that, there's really not too much to it. The one thing I have theorized, actually, which is kind of ridiculous but could potentially work, is having a player throw a smoke right here, and then most people don't know this, but you can actually boost up here and see like everything. So if you had a player's stairs and you tried this, I mean, this is just a fun strategy, but I've theorized doing it because of how good that spot actually is. So maybe you guys can try it and tell me how it goes. Anyways, after you fall back off of these setups, the most common way I think is good to play this is to actually play a rifler right in this corner or up here. And what I'll do is I'll have the opper towards the site, sometimes maybe quick peeking this a little bit or jump peeking it, whatever, but really just focusing on covering the bathrooms. And the rifler stays there, and the opper is just kind of peeking around as if the rifler wasn't there. And then when the rifler calls it, he can throw a flash like this. So you just have the opper throw a flash right over that corner like that. I'll show you where it lands. It comes right over the corner, and if you throw it correctly, you need to throw it a little bit farther than that, I'm sorry, but if you throw it correctly, that will blind everybody in this whole area. So what you really want to be doing is you want to be coming over here, and this is actually a more common spot when we play this angle, so I can cover his bathrooms and he doesn't need to worry about it when I flash push for him, and then throw it right up over there. Wow, I'm sucking at this. Throw it right up over there, and that will blind everybody in this area. He can come around the corner and try and find a frag on people, oftentimes setting up for flashes or kind of just sitting in the middle of the open here, not sure what they're doing, and then he can easily fall back. And after he falls back, we can toss a smoke down right there, and he can kind of play an angle on the other side of the smoke. He can play by this garbage bin, he can play in this corner, he can play a large variety of different angles, or he can fall right back into sight and kind of play this angle or something like that, where he's a little bit safer, depending on if we've gone into a 5-on-4 or a 4-on-3, or we're in a 3-on-3 and whatnot. But the reason I like playing this rifler behind this wall so much is because with that flash, he can check and clear out all of middle, and if they're not here with about 30 seconds left, it's pretty obvious that they have to be either faking B and going back A, or they're just executing on towards B. Most likely that is what is going to be happening if they're not in the middle area there at 20-30 seconds. And so your rifler can get a very quick flank while they're still setting up for smokes and not actually executing into B yet. And one of the really nice things actually about this spot is you can actually flash it from B. If you have a player over here, you can actually just throw a jump flash or something like that over the wall. I used to have this lined up entirely, and that will blind this whole area. So not only can he get flash from the player in A site, but if he hears them getting close up and the player in A site has no flashes, he can get flashed over by someone else and then peek right out. Now, the only thing you have to worry about, and the reason that I showed being on this bench a little bit once or twice, is because terrorists, some terrorists don't actually know this, but a lot do. You can spam straight through this wall, and it's not going to do a ton of damage, but the counter-terrorist will be forced to peek out and try and fight you, and if you have support, you can actually clear that spot entirely just by spamming through the wall. So you do have to be worried about that a little bit as a counter-terrorist. Now, if you are double rifling it, again, there are plenty of spots that you can play and setups you can do to try and stop that, but what you really want to be doing is just going in two-man teams and trying to set up so you can at worst get a trade frag, but optimally get an entry and then fall right back and stop anybody from really doing anything aggressive on your team, and you can kind of give your team a pretty good advantage at almost all times. Now, after falling back into sight, basically, as an opper, you can try and peek this spot here. However, that's become a much more common spot for people to kind of post up on. So you have to be a little bit worried about that. And actually, the shot from behind here onto anybody as they start pushing into sight is actually quite hard. So it's up to you. You really have to do kind of the practice to find out what you want to be doing from there. But the rifler should be kind of covering you so that you can hold that angle and you can get some easy picks. But sometimes you might not be comfortable here, and it's important you shouldn't really force yourself to play here, because I know I've seen a few oppers who really couldn't hit those shots consistently, and they were just getting themselves killed trying to play a spot that they weren't really comfortable playing. So you have to figure out, you have to practice that, or you have to figure out where else you can play if you really can't play there. But anyways, as you get into the late round, you can actually rotate a rifler or you can rotate the opper a little bit if you need. Down here, this is actually a very good line of sight into the site. You can catch them as they move in on the rotate, and you can get some free kills, and you're still only 1.5 seconds away from A if necessary. So that's actually a very good spot to play, you know, in a 3-on-3 or something like that. Now, with pistols, I think a very good way to play it is kind of boosting up on this truck, but there are plenty of ways you can play it, and most often you'll do a pistol strat, so you don't really need to worry about that too much. However, I do think that having a good spawn, jump up, and peek party is a very effective way to play pistol, because if they're not T-stairs, it's very unlikely on pistol round that they're like walking playground or anything, so you can actually just push right up. Now, the final thing I'll say is actually about the party peek. When you're peeking party, usually I'll have a rifler right here with a flash out. And if I take a shot, or if I'm getting pushed back, he'll flash over and he can actually kind of push up if he wants, or he optimally will fall right back. And if I find out that nobody is in middle, so if I peek this and nobody is there, and I'm just kind of looking around, nobody's around here, I'll always have the rifler push up and get into this spot like this, looking down there, and the opper can kind of peek around here. Sometimes the opper could actually flash him over to clear playground, but optimally the rifler can get there, and the opper can actually kind of rotate off a little bit, because if the terrorists actually come through towards A again later, they'll come up the stairs and they'll make noise, so you don't really have to worry too much about that, and you've got them kind of trapped in B. The one thing I don't really like doing as much is actually flanking down here, because a lot of teams will have somebody watching the flank in really weird angles, especially this angle over here if they're looking for an execute at B, and if you die, it kind of ruins your whole map control. So I actually think it's more effective to keep that rifler alive in this spot, or at worst in this spot. This is actually a fairly good spot as well. You can kind of watch over here and you can watch back. If you keep that rifler alive, you have so much map control that you don't actually need to have the frags from this guy flanking. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope this helped.